Okay, everybody, welcome to the Town of Williston's Development Review Board for Tuesday, September 25, 2018. We are going to bring the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Three items on the agenda tonight, one continued, so four items on the agenda, one continued. DP 13-19.4 GIT Realty was pushed forward to...
No, 1821 Robert, or not Robert.
Robert, I'm sorry,
Yep,
DP 18, I apologize, DP 18-21 was moved forward to
October 23rd.
October 23rd, right. So we have three other items on the agenda for tonight. So first up is DP 16-41.1, REM Development, LLC.
Any public announcements?
Later.
Yep.
Welcome, Mr. Rowe.
Nice wheeled easel tonight.
Wheeled easel, very good. So Andy, if you would state your name and your address for the record, please.
Andy Rowe, Lamoureux and Dickinson, 14 Morris Drive, Essex.
Great. And, for the record, my company does do business with Andy's company, Lamoureux and Dickinson. Staff is up first.
Alrighty. This is a request for discretionary permit review of a proposal to construct a 40 by 35 storage structure, regrade a portion of the existing paved loading area, and replace loading docks at 340 Avenue D in the Industrial Zoning District West. This property is currently developed with two multi-tenant buildings, parking, and other related site improvements. I will note that the applicant before the meeting said that they would like to propose a 40 by 40 storage structure. And I will get into that in further detail in a moment. The project history on this property. This is the first time this proposal is reviewed by the DRB, and pre-application review is not required due to the scale of the proposed project. The findings of fact. The proposed use for the property. The applicant proposes to maintain the existing industrial uses on the property. The new structure is for Interactive Maintenance Services, a four-season property maintenance and management company. NAICS 5617 is an allowed use in Table 36.A. The other uses on the property are also allowed in that table. The applicant is proposing a 40 by 40-foot structure on existing pavement. It will be located outside the 9-foot rear setback, a Type 3 landscape buffer, and approximately 96 feet from the northerly property line, outside the Type 1 landscape buffer. The three-sided structure will be used to store salt, sand, bark mulch, and other materials. The applicant is proposing that additional 5 feet in width towards Building A, so it's not going to interfere with the side or rear yard setbacks, and it will be on the existing pavement. The applicant is proposing to regrade the existing paved access and replace existing loading docks at the rear of Building A. This will allow for outgrade access into Building A. The applicant is not proposing changes to access. The property has access to Avenue D by a shared driveway through 368 Avenue D. The existing landscaping is identified on the site plan and in compliance with the landscaping requirements. That is gone into further detail in the tables below. Street trees. The site plan identifies street trees along the southerly corner of the property adjacent to Avenue D. The site is in compliance with Chapter 23. Wetlands and waterways are not present on the site, and then there's a laundry list of things that are not proposed on the site. We sent this around for public comment from Public Works Fire, and they did not have any comments. Staff recommends approval of this discretionary permit with recommended findings of fact as provided above and conclusions of law and conditions of approval as provided below. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Andy?
Other than the request that the storage building be 40 by 40 instead of 40 by 35, nothing to add?
Questions from the board?
So you can have the opening facing east, out of curiosity?
Yes.
Okay. Just because
Yep.
weather.
Just a very basic question. Does this need to come before this board? I mean, what's the trigger? Is it the footprint, the size of the structure?
Yeah, so, any accessory structures in excess of 120 square feet on commercial sites require discretionary permit review or amendment to a discretionary permit in our bylaw. Any site work in excess of 1,000 square feet does the same, but for structures, for standalone structures, it's very, very small. We've had discretionary permits for 200 square foot storage sheds on existing commercial sites before as a result of that provision in the bylaw.
Build a doghouse in your backyard and you're coming.
If you're
That's a
commercial.
big dog.
Yeah, oh, right, good
commercial.
point.
If you're commercial and you're adding on, additions under 1,000 square feet can be handled administratively. Standalone structures, the threshold is significantly lower.
Other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? One last time from the board? All set? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to close DP 16-41.1, REM Development LLC at 7:00. Okay, so DP 16-41.1 is closed at 7:06. Sir, which hearing are you here for tonight?
You talking to me?
I'm talking to you.
The roll bar.
It has been continued to the 25th.
23rd.
October 23rd.
23rd. It's been continued to the 23rd,
Okay.
not tonight.
Thank you.
Yep. I figured you were probably here for that, that's why I'm picking on you.
I'm sure we're gonna get a
You
notice.
kind of looked at me like, why are you talking to me?
Welcome
Thank you
to,
very much.
You're very welcome.
you're welcome to stay.
Matter of fact, we need another board member.
Start deputizing.
Maybe the three of us then.
Ooh, yeah.
That's his name, David.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, next up is DP 13-19.4, GIT Realty LLC. Good evening. If you would state your name and your address, sir.
Chris Gibson, currently at 64 Harvest Lane, Williston, Vermont.
Okay, Chris, welcome. All right. Emily, this is you again?
Yes. This is a request for a discretionary permit review of a proposal to establish an outdoor display area at 4705 Williston Road in the Industrial Zoning District West. This property is currently developed with an existing structure, parking, and related site improvements. This is the first time this proposal is reviewed by the DRB and the Fourth Amendment to DP 13-19. Pre-application review is not required due to the scale of the proposed project. Proposed development on this project was reviewed and approved by the DRB as follows. There's a lengthy history on this property. More recently, there was a 3-lot subdivision, and this lot was created around the existing building. And then a series of events for a snack trailer, DP 13-19, which was withdrawn. Outdoor sales and site improvements for Sears Hometown Store. Again, the mobile food trailer was proposed and approved. A master sign plan, and then an amendment to the master sign plan and outdoor storage for Sears Hometown Store. The findings of fact for this proposal. The applicant proposes to locate Harvest Equipment, a farm and lawn equipment dealer, in the vacant building. Outdoor power equipment stores are NAICS code 444210 and is a subsector of NAICS 444, which is listed as an allowed use in the industrial zoning district. Burke's Barbecue Food Truck is currently located on the property and will operate until October 2018. Mobile food vendors are allowed in the Industrial Zoning District West with a discretionary permit per the bylaw 17.3.4. No changes to access are proposed. The property is accessed by an existing curb cut on Industrial Ave and an existing driveway onto the neighboring property to access Williston Road. The applicant is proposing 5 outdoor display areas. Outdoor sales and storage are an allowed use, but only within areas designated for that purpose on an approved site plan. The applicant must amend the site plan because the number, location, and configuration of the display areas are different than previously approved. Covered outdoor storage is identified on the north side of the warehouse and is compliant with the bylaw. A loading ramp is identified and is compliant with the outdoor storage requirements as well. What follows is a table where each of the display areas is numbered in alignment with the numbers I put on the site plan, a description, and then our comments.
Emily, can I interrupt you for 1 second? So in the last paragraph, you said the applicant must amend the site plan because the number, location, and configuration of the proposed display areas are different from that previously approved.
So
So how does that relate to your table on page 3 versus the site plan here that is numbered in both red and yellow?
So the yellow highlighted are the photos that the applicant provided,
Okay.
and then the red numbers are what I added to identify each of the outdoor storage areas.
Okay.
In the past, the previous outdoor storage isn't identified on here, it's only what they're proposing now.
And are you looking for the applicant to resubmit this with their notations on it, or are we working off of these numbers?
They can. It's more so just to give information about each area, because there are gonna need to be some conditions for some of them.
Okay. All right,
So-
okay.
Just to be clear, the red numbers are the proposed locations.
Yes.
And the yellow highlighted are the pictures.
Yep, the yellow highlighted are the pictures that the applicant provided, and they provided those yellow numbers 1, 2, and 3.
And the red numbers correspond to page 4,
Correct.
page 3.
Page 3, yes.
All right, very good, thank you.
So display area 1 is located on the southwestern corner of the building. This is the one adjacent to Route 2 and Industrial Ave. We'll discuss that further in setbacks. Display area 2 is located on a gravel area to the east of the building, and it complies with the bylaw as proposed. Display area 3 also complies as proposed, and staff notes that the fence and display area must not encroach on the access drive or vehicle pedestrian circulation. As it's identified on the site plan, it appears it will not. Display area 4 is on the far eastern side of the property. Fencing has not been identified on the site plan to contain this area, and the board can add a condition of approval if they deem it necessary. The display area must be outside the 9-foot side yard setback to the adjoining property and outside the 35-yard front yard setback to Williston Road. Currently, it's just an open grass area with some patches of gravel, so the fencing will help to delineate where those setbacks are. And lastly is display area 5, which also complies as proposed. This area is also identified for snow storage, and it is currently where Burke's Barbecue is located until October 2018. Staff notes that approving display area 5 does not void approval for a mobile food vendor, but changing the location of the food vendor would require an amendment to DP 14-19. That's the approval for the food cart. The discussion of setbacks. The parcel is adjacent to 2 public ways. The front yard setback is 35 feet from boundaries adjacent to public ways. The subdivision plat for DP 1206 identifies a dedicated easement to the town for road construction around the corner and along Industrial Ave. Vermont Agency of Transportation proposed intersection improvement plan set, as well as the town tax map, depict a similar parcel boundary for the southwestern corner of the property. The town tax map appears to incorporate the dedicated easement into the Industrial Ave right-of-way. Staff understands the property lines to exist as depicted on the applicant's site plan. Display Area 1 is proposed outside the 35-foot front yard setback. Staff recommends that the easement should be depicted on final plans. The DRB can decide to add a condition of approval if necessary. Landscaping. The subject parcel is adjacent to 2 public ways and 2 industrial properties. The site plan identifies existing landscaping, and that is described below. In the zoning district, street trees are also considered as part of the landscaping. The applicant has not identified a landscape plan to plant street trees in compliance with bylaw chapter 23 or 26. Street trees can be considered a type 4 landscape buffer. Planting trees outside the state and town right-of-way along Williston Road and Industrial Ave would conflict with the existing parking located in the front yard setback, as well as the future AOT intersection improvements. The bylaw states that street tree standards apply to all developments for which a discretionary permit is required. The board can decide if street trees should be required as part of this discretionary permit. Parking. The applicant is not proposing changes to parking. The project does not generate a requirement for additional parking. Portions of the parking area are existing non-conforming, as the original site plan was approved under an older set of regulations. 2 parking areas are located in the 35-foot front yard setback, 7 spaces along Industrial Ave, and 13 spaces along Williston Road. Staff reached out to the Vermont Agency of Transportation for comment because the parking is located within the front yard setback and very close to the state right-of-way of Route 2. AOT has planned upgrades for Industrial Ave Williston Road intersection scheduled for 2020. David Black of District 5, the District 5 administrator, commented, "We need a controlled access in this area until the project installs a curb. The parking needs to be outside the state right-of-way. If the existing curb is currently in the state right-of-way or does not function, some type of temporary curb, delineators, or vegetation needs to be installed to control the parking. There is an existing curb along Route 2 edge of pavement. Staff recommends delineators along the Williston Road parking area to create a visual barrier for safety between the parking lot and the road." The board.
If you'd stop right there for a
Okay.
second.
Yep.
So their existing parking is in the state right away. The state.
No.
No,
It
it's very
It's very
close.
close to the property line, but it's not beyond it on Williston Road.
Okay, but it is within the setback.
Yes.
Yes.
And during your conversation with David Black, did he happen to indicate if they're gonna encroach on that parking at all? When they redo that area?
No, it appears more of the corner of the property, will
Okay.
get kind of chopped off, but that section doesn't appear to be impacted by the state improvements.
I think the intersection's moving south, right, to straighten out.
Right, it's gonna go more to the Andrus property, south of the intersection.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
And is your point about the delineators is in that grass area between the curbed edge of road and the start of the parking
Yeah,
spaces?
to create a visual barrier so people don't drive into the intersection or
Yeah.
cut through,
Yeah.
just to create, because they're pretty close, the state road, a busy road, and people backing in and out of parking spaces. What follows is the parking requirements table. As currently proposed, the existing site has 8 more parking spaces than would be required today. The property is compliant with ADA requirements. The applicant has not identified bicycle spaces or end-of-trip facilities. The applicant will need to provide outside spaces for 2 bicycles and 1 long-term space in compliance with bylaw 14.8. Condition 8 below addresses the requirements. Additional parking lot landscaping is not required. A traffic study is not required for the scale of the project. Designated snow storage areas are shown on the plans in 2 locations and are in compliance with the bylaw. Trash and recycling containers are identified in the rear property as dumpster enclosure. This area conforms to the solid waste standards of the bylaw. This project is not subject to design review because the applicant is not proposing a new structure or major addition. Properties that abut Route 2 are subject to design review in this zoning district. No wetlands or waterways are present on the site. And lastly, there are existing nonconformities on the site. The existing structure and overall site plan were approved under previous development standards. 2 parking areas are within the front yard setbacks, and bicycle parking is not provided. The front yard landscaping along the public ways is not sufficient to meet the street tree requirements. We received comments from Public Works, Fire Department. The police department did not respond for comments. The fire department's memo is attached. It's most related to fire safety, labeling, alarm boxes, nothing that would change the site plan. In a memo dated August 23rd, 2018, DPW commented, "Add Burke's barbecue trailer to the plan." The applicant represented via email that the food truck will be removed October 2018, and its location is depicted on DP 14-19 final plans. So the board can decide to remove condition of approval 2A if necessary. Staff recommends approval of this discretionary permit if the board addresses the recommended findings of fact above with conclusions of law and conditions of approval as provided below. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So Chris, normally when we, after staff finishes, I kind of open it up to you, but there's a lot going on here. So I thought what we would do maybe is, we'll take it point by point and let our board jump in as we go along and have some interaction and input from you. And are you the owner or the representative for Harvest?
Yes. Yep.
So if we start on page 2, and kind of work our way down.
I apologize, I wasn't given a copy of this, so
You don't have a copy of it?
No.
Aha. Okay.
I'm not confused, that's why. I do have a copy of the map here, I know what we're proposing to do and what, like the delineator along the street, we propose to.
Have a second one around, would you?
I don't.
Use mine, I'll share with David or something.
Starting on page 2,
Okay.
under findings of fact. So this is the staff report. You didn't read this online, you haven't seen this, this is the first time you're seeing this?
Correct.
Okay.
I was supposed to have been emailed a copy, I never received one.
Okay. Alrighty. During Emily's synopsis of the project, did anything stand out as being dramatically different from what you understand the project to be?
No, no. we're really not doing much anything different than was done there in the past.
Well, I think that's probably true, except that the site has lots of nonconformities pre-existing, that the staff is picking up on, and we're gonna talk a little bit about. Okay. So under outdoor sales and storage, it's certainly approved. There is a note in here that applicant must amend the site plan. So, because the number, location, and configuration of the proposed display is different from what was previously approved. Okay, so we're looking to the applicant to come up with a new site plan.
Yep.
So that's what this site plan that's been submitted shows, is what the applicant wants to do. Outdoor display areas related to when this was the Sears Hometown store were approved by the DRB, but they were smaller
Yep.
and not as extensive, particularly on the corner of Williston Road and Industrial Ave. So there was essentially a couple feet deep display area along the Williston Road side of the building, and then use of the other larger areas that are not adjacent to the streets was approved, either under that approval or before, when this was the stonework store. But what
Prior,
isn't-
yep, previously.
Right, so what's in front of you now takes everything that's between the existing building and the edge of that 35-foot setback and would designate it as an area for outdoor storage and display. So, that's part of why you're hearing the discussion of that property line versus the easement versus what might happen to the intersection, because we had to do some research to figure out whether what's shown on that plan that you see is the property line the board should be measuring the setback from. And the determination was that it is. That's where the property line is today. That's where the property line is proposed to stay, although an easement may allow Industrial Ave Route 2 intersection or some components thereof to be on some of the applicant's land at some point.
Crossing over a leach field, it looks like.
Okay, all
Are
right.
there sewers in this area, just out of curiosity?
There's sewer, this is in the town's sewer service area, but in the Industrial Avenue area, not every property is connected to municipal service.
The reason I was gonna say is if they start expanding this intersection, and end up on that leach field, is there a plan that they're gonna be connected to the sewer at that point?
All of the sort of utility work associated with that intersection improvement's been designed, yes. So there's an extensive
So it's taken care of.
upgrade plan that identifies all of those conflicts and all of those issues.
Are we judging this based on the existing site plan or some future work that may or may not happen?
So what our investigation was to determine if that property line that you're looking at tonight was gonna stay the property line, even if the intersection was changed, and the answer is yes, it will. There may be an easement where the state and the town get to do things on the applicant's property, but where their line is, and therefore where the town would typically measure the setback from, will not change.
Okay, so just to confirm, this is the site plan we're working off, and this is correct.
Yes.
Yeah, it was necessary for Harvest Equipment to do what they want to do. There needs to be a revised site plan reviewed and approved by the DRB. That's what that statement means.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
I'm just confused with the date. So the date on here is 2013, but it shows that fence line at the 35-foot setback around display area 1.
So it has that date of 2013, and then above it.
Oh, the revision.
Teeny tiny August 15th, 2018 site revisions.
That's when, so that fence line was drawn in just in August.
Recently, yep.
I see.
So they had Summit Engineering update some of the graphics and labeling on here, but this is essentially the same thing that is included in your packet for the final plans for the subdivision that show the easement.
Again, I'm graphically oriented here, but, so am I hearing that the display areas are any space that's not paved, not building, and not in the setback?
There's a little bit of the property on Industrial Ave that meets those criteria that is not proposed for a display, up by yellow number 3.
Yes.
But otherwise, John, I think that's relatively accurate. If it's out of the setback, it's not a building and it's not parking.
I'm just, when I'm being asked to approve display area, it'd be great to have a site plan, I think, that was maybe a little clearer on exactly where those areas are.
Well, that was kind of where I was going with this whole thing.
And again, if I understood you at the beginning, you put the red numbers on here.
I did put the red numbers.
You did. That makes it even worse. Well, it makes it worse in terms of being able to understand. Thank you for doing that, because that makes it more understandable. But, what we got from the applicant, it's really hard to tell what I'm approving.
Just in service of good communication at the meeting tonight, I'll note that the applicant who pursued this approval is the owner of the property, who is out of town tonight, and he has sent his prospective tenant in Harvest Equipment to us tonight to
Lucky you.
represent the project. So some of what seems like a little bit of confusion, I think, is just related that there's, the party that was negotiating filing the application with us is not here tonight.
I think I could pretty well define what we're looking to do with that, if
Well, that would be my next question. What are we displaying, and what's it gonna look like?
It would
when you're
be-
done?
along Industrial Avenue, along the edge of the building there would be probably a row of lawnmowers and across the front in the short area. And then the bulk of our display area will be on the other side of the driveway over along the Route 2, just before
So
we.
what we're calling section number 4, it's where the gravestones used to be.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And we're also gonna put a chain link fence around where the cedars are and back around the side of the building with the black mesh that's mostly for our service storage area, partially to not so everybody doesn't see what's in there, partially for security as well.
Is that fence shown on here?
So
Is that
photo
what
number
that
2.
line in X is? Line
Yeah.
X, line X?
Yep, the line X is the fence, and number 2 is that chain link fence with the green privacy slats. And then photo number 1 uses the same fence symbol on the site plan, but it's a wood bollard and rope or chain fence. So something not as visually demanding as the chain link fence. And that's the fence that's proposed in the front yard setback, or along the front yard setback, to delineate outdoor display area 1, and that's what staff proposes to continue as well around display area 4. A wood bollard and rope or chain fence for those setbacks.
So Emily, I apologize, one more time, the fence around display area number 1 will be,
Will match photo number 1, wood bollards with a looping rope chain fence. That one,
okay,
yeah. And then,
And this is a picture of what is expected, not what's there.
not what's there, that's a different site.
I was spending a little time trying to figure out where that
I know,
building
I
is.
know.
Yep,
that's the TD Bank building.
that's just an example of the fence that's not present on the site currently.
And the same thing would be along US Route 2 and display area 4.
Yes. To delineate that 35-foot front yard setback and then the 9-foot side yard setback from the neighboring property.
Neither of which are shown on this site plan now, right? The fence line isn't shown on
Not on display,
Correct.
on display
The,
4.
the applicant did not propose a fence for display area 4. Staff is recommending that.
And the applicant has not proposed anything for the parking spaces along Route 2 to differentiate the parking spaces from the state right away.
We're gonna do the same style fence along there as we went along. the
Post and a rope?
Yes.
Post and rope thing. Okay.
That would work.
Okay.
So display area 3, I don't know if you have the numbering there, but you're showing that you would have this, the chain link fence in front of it. So would that still be a display area?
Outdoor storage.
Outdoor storage.
Oh, but not for display for the public to
Correct,
see?
correct.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, so this is not display area, that's not display.
And that fence kind of goes through the middle of display area 2.
Goes around from the side of the building, down the length of the building, around back to the overhang.
Since you're gonna be basically putting a chain link fence across, but are you do that, or are you adding a gate?
The gate will probably be on the backside, but the ramp, we're not really gonna use that ramp. That's not a function for us to use, really. It's not,
Okay.
so.
Okay. One thing I want the board to think about, I'll throw this out there, we can talk about it, after, is, continuing this so that a proper site plan gets, submitted to staff. We're not even partway through the staff report, and we're hung up on where things are going, where fences are going, what type of fences. Some things are shown, some things are not. Parking lot delineation's not shown. So I think the board ought to consider requesting that the applicant get this all cleaned up, get it resubmitted, and it be continued to a later date. So that's, I'm throwing out there that now we can talk about it a little later. Think about that as we go along. Okay? Next page, page 3. Emily ran us through the display area description, and we've been talking about this. And as I understand it from your description and the written description, display area 2, 3, and 5 comply. With display area 1. So that's simply requiring, the rope and bollard fence to delineate the setback.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything else in that section that needs to be changed?
And just that display area, have that fencing,
Okay.
to contain the area, fencing along the front yard setback and the side yard setback. So basically, the only one that requires an additional condition would be fencing area, or outdoor display area 4.
That's only along Route 2 part that they need that fencing.
Okay, so let's talk about display area 4. Outside of the 9-foot side yard setback to the adjoining property and outside of the 35-foot front yard setback on Williston Road. All right, so just something along like that, right?
Right. Is the side yard setback, that's a requirement? If it's for display, I mean, if they're movable equipment, there's no way around that. They have to be 9 feet off the side yard. Yeah.
Only landscaping in the side yard setback.
So we're looking for a delineation, and is your plan to use the same type of bollard and rope?
Yes.
Okay.
With all these setbacks and things, are you gonna end up having more or less property for your tractors than you currently have in Harvest?
I think we're gonna have a similar amount. The biggest thing is now people will actually be able to see it, because of the way things are now, nobody can actually see our product, which is a bit of an issue from where we are.
I'm just kinda curious, cause I'm like, there's.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like a little bit of ground going away, I'll make sure that you understand how much you're losing.
Right, yes. Biggest thing is our shop area is not big enough currently where we are, and this has a much bigger opportunity for service.
The footprint of the shop is larger than where you are now?
Twice as large, yes, with less showroom space, more service area.
Yeah, but John Deere's don't need service.
Nobody likes to change their own oil.
So then under setbacks, staff is recommending that the easement be depicted on the final plans. So it's another, and I think it's another reason why.
Correct. So included with your staff report is a copy of the subdivision final plans that show the easement highlighted. And staff recommends that be replicated on this new site plan, that easement exists.
Okay, and Chris, are you, I assume you're making notes, and if you're not, you can certainly chat with staff on, on these as well. Anything from, any comments from the board on?
One question I got on the backside, that 9-foot setback where they're gonna put this rope bound, are there already trees there, or were there proposal there was gonna be trees for the delineation?
There are already trees there, they're showing them on the site plan, but there's no clear differentiation of where the property line is. So this, when you're moving equipment around, having the fences makes it easy to keep everything contained
Okay.
where it's supposed to be.
Just checking, okay.
Everybody all right, moving on?
Yep.
Landscaping, existing landscaping. So there's a discussion about so I guess, so under landscaping, it appears that we're okay.
Landscaping, we're okay. Then it jumps to street trees where there's.
So the next, right, so the next item is street trees. How's the board feel about this? This seems like a, what was that?
I don't think we need them if they're gonna just tear them out a little bit.
Well, there seems to be that.
Yeah.
Much of your green space, if you look at, particularly on the Route 2 frontage, what's grassed there out to the edge of pavement is primarily off of the applicant's property. You know, the site was developed at a time when, in this zoning district, there was a 50-foot setback for buildings, and there was no setback for parking, which is why it was developed the way it was. Setbacks at the time were construed as being for structures, and structures were just buildings. And so parking in compliance with the bylaws of the time was located in an area today that you would look at and say, "But there can't really be anything other than landscaping in it." You know, the other part about street trees is, a lot of the way our bylaw talks about street trees is it anticipates that they'll be planned for when a subdivision is created or when a new road is created in a project or a subdivision, and that they end up in the right-of-way of the road. And then what we find ourselves as a staff doing over and over is reviewing projects where we don't have control over what's happening in the road right-of-way, and we have an existing site, and we're trying to kind of sort of achieve the same look on the private property that's out of the right-of-way. And occasionally, there's ones like this where there's just not a lot of room in which to do that. So, you know, could you get something in out on that corner at Industrial and 2? Maybe. But where there's that existing parking and very little space for it to happen on the private land, I'm not sure that, you know, we can't require the applicant to go get a tree put in the right-of-way of Route 2.
Right.
That ship has sailed.
But we could create an island, since they have 8 more parking spaces than is required. You could plant a tree in there every 40 feet, and you take out one parking
Well, it's
spot.
all in the setback.
It's in the,
It's up in the right of way, right? It's in the setback.
it's in the setback,
Yeah.
which is where we would normally put them.
Now, I understand what you mean. You could have essentially a peninsula.
I mean, the thing I would be concerned about is, this is a pretty major intersection, and it's getting redone, so you don't want to put in trees that are going to get torn out. I would also be worried about putting trees too close to that intersection, because it's going to create problems with visibility.
Such as by Gardner Supply down here where you can't see the stoplight.
Such as in a lot of spots.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a very dangerous spot. I've almost went through that stoplight a number of times.
I almost did it the other day too, actually. You can't see the trees, see the lights until you get past the trees.
With that,
Yeah,
in-
well, I
with
can see
that
all
in
kinds of
mind,
trees
though,
from
That's why,
outside.
that's why the speed limit's 30 miles an hour along there.
with that in mind, this is a very bare site. There's not.
It's gonna be all green though. Everything there's gonna be green.
Yeah. You can even start them up too.
Yeah.
And they can move,
And polluting.
so we have green here, and so they do that.
So, board,
I'm fine with no trees.
okay? Anybody else?
I think a couple of trees at the intersection of industrial and US Route 2 could give some,
Wasn't there a tree there that was removed by the state just a little while ago in
Yeah.
that intersection?
I mean, it'd have to be done so that it's safe.
Have a bush, 'cause that's about all I can afford.
One thing I do recall is that the freestanding sign on the site that was there for Sears, was allowed under a condition that its base be landscaped, which I don't think ever happened. There had been sort of a low landscaping bed associated with the tree that you guys are remembering that was removed. And adding some kind of landscaping that's not just lawn to some piece of that corner would serve some of the purposes of a street tree without, creating some of the line of sight and other issues that the board's concerned about, so. It's not everything.
Around the existing, just around the base, like a cutout area with flowers and bushes and things around
Yeah,
the
so-
base of the sign.
Williston has a requirement in our bylaw that the bases of freestanding signs aren't supposed to just be sort of stuck in the ground. There's supposed to be something around them. And adjacent to that, before that sign was established, there was a small planting bed out in that corner. So for the board, looking to get some of the function, understanding that it might be hard to get, a major hardwood tree every 40 feet on this site, could ask for a condition where final plans show some kind of landscaping element that's not just grass in that location.
Okay?
Where's the sign? Is it the one next to the van spaces? Is that what I'm seeing?
No, it's not depicted on here. It's just off the corner of the building, the far southwestern corner of the building,
That's another item, we're gonna wanna see
on the site plan.
on the revised site plan.
Is it gonna be behind the new fence or in front of it?
It's gotta be behind it, because otherwise it's.
So the fence is gonna hide,
Well, it's a rope,
I guess it's a rope.
It's a rope fence.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
it's just a,
It could be out in front of it. Signs are subject to a different setback than other things in our bylaw, so signs often
It
have a
needs to be
5 or
on the
10.
site plan, I guess.
Yeah, so having it located and understanding what would happen near it would be good for the board, I think.
What is that little thing next to the handicap spaces? Is that a bike rack? Do you know?
There's nothing there right now.
Hopscotch?
Right next to the yellow one, that little,
Yeah, I do, but.
but there's, you're saying there's just grass now?
Exactly.
so that can come off the site.
Correct.
So if you put a tree right there, it wouldn't be a problem with that non-existent structure. Just asking.
No, I don't see the issue with
It would be nice to have some landscaping out on that corner. And if you could do it in such a way as it didn't interfere with future construction or visibility around that corner, perhaps some low plantings either in front of that fence or in lieu of that fence to delineate that display area.
What are you planning on putting in that area for display?
Just mowers, lawnmowers.
But that's interesting. If you did that in lieu of the fence, right? If you actually had some shrubs or,
I hesitate to design this, but I would like to see a proposal here that,
Well, landscape your proposal.
that addresses our concerns perhaps.
Okay. All right. So you're hearing from the board, this is,
It's kind of like a pre-app here.
it does, yeah. You're hearing from the board that the board is going to want to see some form of landscape plan, that more than what is
Or what is existing.
more than what is existing. Now, there's nothing proposed, so we'd like to see some greenery around the corner.
Mark Austin, the owner of the property, was hoping that he could talk the state to put some guardrails around that corner simply for a safety factor, because people have hit that building.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he'll have
think
to,
that's
he'll have
prob-
to deal with AOT on that.
Yeah.
So that's not something, that's not something we deal with. They'll have to run, the cars will run through the bushes that you're gonna plant in the ground.
Correct. So put huge boulders there and then they'll stop.
All right. There was under the parking requirements, you're gonna need to show bicycle parking on your site plan? Okay. So, just to recap, the fencing, the different types of fencing, where it's going, landscaping, cleaning up the site plan, removing that little item near the handicap, thank you, locating the sign, locating any new fencing in area number 4. Again, staff notes that there are no identified bicycle spaces or end-of-trip facilities. Does end-of-trip facility apply in this case?
We've typically looked at those requirements as coming out of the parking requirements, such that when something changes about parking, it's when you start to enter into all of the other elements of parking. That said, even when someone like this applicant's not really doing anything to the proposed parking or existing parking, the board's looked at the outdoor and sometimes indoor storage requirements as being relatively easy to meet, whereas the end-of-trip facility, which is a shower, which in a public building means, an ADA-sized shower, can really start to feel like a reach if someone's not really doing anything to their parking, whereas, getting that outdoor rack and identifying a storage area inside the building's not usually as difficult on the final plan.
Okay.
So it's up to the board. You always have flexibility of how much of the bylaw to apply to a pre-existing site.
So we're gonna wanna see bike, is one of the things that the town is pushing, through the town bylaws, is, the ability of people to bike to work. Some people do, a lot of people don't.
We've had one bicycle in our building in 7 years, but yes.
We understand. You're not the first person to say that. But that one person should have or that one bike should have a place to park it.
Finally striped in?
I'm sorry, Paul, what was that?
I was gonna say, did they finally stripe in a bike lane down to that point?
Yes,
Okay,
there's,
finally.
there's bike lanes.
What about industrial?
No, but industrial only has a wide shoulder, but there is a long-term plan for more bicycle and pedestrian facilities along industrial, because
Especially since you've got all those little concrete trucks driving on that road.
so there's a lot of vehicle traffic. There's also a transit route that stops right there, and there are significant state office facilities still in the White Cap building. So there's demand for pedestrian and bike access in the area. And yeah, the bike lanes on 2 have been in place for about a year now.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Parking lot landscaping not required, traffic study not required. Snow storage is listed in section number 5. Storage area number 5. And 4. Yep.
Right up by,
All right.
right up by the front.
Yep, and store, okay, so that's taken care of. Solid waste, recycling containers are identified with a dumpster enclosure, yep. No on the design review, no wetlands, it's all sand. Existing nonconformities, so, street tree we talked about. Is the food truck going away?
Yes.
That's-
Yes.
You're not gonna renew their lease?
I don't have space for
You don't
them,
have space.
because I'm gonna put the dumpster over there, because I have to put a loading dock where the dumpster is currently, so that trucks can pull in and back up to the loading dock.
Okay, all right. And then I guess the one thing we didn't talk about that does need to be shown on here will be the delineation at the end of the parking spaces, or the, whatever it's called.
That's gonna
Delineators
be the-
along.
bollard and rope fence.
Whatever keeps them from driving into Route 2.
Whatever, keep, what you, it
It's
was
gonna
a,
be the bollard and,
Rope and bollard along Route 2 and along the other side.
Fence type one.
it's gonna be the same thing as you did.
okay. So what's the, how's the board feel about continuing this and getting a proper site plan in with a,
I would be strongly in favor of that.
Same.
okay. So, generally, staff, if we are to continue this, generally, we like to continue it out. We can continue it in, to two weeks out.
Okay.
That doesn't give you a lot of time to get the information in.
2 weeks, we
And you're-
have that. We have
October
that.
9th is the training, so
That's
it can only
training.
go to October 23rd, and that
So,
gives them.
okay, so the next available one is October 23rd.
Okay. Hopefully Mark will be back from South Africa then and the owner of the property.
Okay, so I would strongly suggest that you set up a time, or Mark sets up a time with staff to go through the things that we have talked about tonight, because we are not issuing a report, all right? This is simply being pended forward. Staff has made their notes, hopefully you've made yours about what we're looking for, and they can help you walk through that in developing a more comprehensive site plan. Anything else from the board? Any other questions? Anything you want to add that we didn't touch on?
The one thing that just kind of sticks in my, if Route 2 does expand, where did their parking go?
According to what I understand, it's supposed to go, the Route 2 is expanding on the other side of the road.
For sure.
That's what V-Trans is telling us.
Okay.
Anything in the state of Vermont is subject to change.
That's what that, like I said, that's the only thing, because I mean, that would really put it.
Paul, that was one of my questions when I started off asking about the right-of-ways and setbacks too, because if it expanded in that direction, it would go away, right? So,
And so would we. I mean, we would obviously move at that point, because if we didn't have room to park, customers to park, we would not be there.
any other questions from the board?
Nope.
Okay, so we are going to continue this to the 23rd. Chris, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Hope we didn't put you too much through the ringer.
Been the worst, eh? Schedule you, Emily, next week or so.
Yep, give me a call tomorrow morning and we can talk.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up is DP 09-01.15, Snyder FC Commercial Properties LLC and Riley Properties LLC. And with that in mind, I'm going to recuse myself because I have a financial interest in the property.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Pete is going to run the hearing.
Welcome, Andy and Chris. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Andy Rowe, Lamoureux and Dickinson, 14 Morris Drive, Essex.
Chris Snyder, Snyder Homes, Snyder Finney Crossing, Commercial Properties, Shelburne.
Thank you. Matt?
All right. So this is a request for a discretionary permit to amend the approval for the Finney Crossing mixed-use project in the Taft Corners zoning district. This amendment is for the purpose of allowing the creation of an additional stormwater pond on the site, discussed in the application as number 6. And this, the reason for requesting an amendment to add this has to do with a recent Act 250 appeal of the Finney Crossing project by an abutter who was asserting that Finney's currently approved treatment of stormwater did not fully guarantee that pre-construction levels of runoff from Finney Crossing onto the appellant's site would be maintained or reduced. And the result of that is that Finney Crossing is asking to add this additional stormwater pond to further ensure that what runs off of the Finney site will be less than what ran off of the Finney site before anything was ever built there. So stormwater, Andy will be able to point this out on the plan, but it runs from off-site onto the Finney site, and it runs from the Finney site off of the Finney site. And when someone is adding impervious surface, part of how they're relating the way they treat their stormwater is to look at everything that was happening on the site before you built anything, and then making sure that you're mitigating for your impervious surface by treating whatever runoff is now moving faster because you've paved part of the site. So in this case, there was a disagreement between Finney and their neighbor about what was the correct level of treatment. And as I understand it, the resolution of that has been for Finney to add, or propose to add, additional stormwater treatment to the site, create this pond. I'm kind of belaboring that because I messed up and I left a sentence fragment at the end of my project history. So what that last sentence in the project history should read is: the proposed additional pond will help ensure that levels of stormwater runoff from the Finney site onto the Taft Corner Shopping Center site are lower than pre-construction levels. In other words, that was always asserted. This has to do more with compliance with state stormwater permits than town bylaws. But by way of metaphor, this pond adds a belt to the suspenders when it comes to ensuring that condition. So this part of the site at Finney is currently one of the less developed portions of the site. It's a part that's proposed for one of the commercial phases of Finney Crossing, but really has only ever had sketch plan or pre-application approval. In other words, what the exact configuration of the buildings, the parking areas, and other things in this quadrant of the site will be is not necessarily completely known. Discretionary permit proposals for these buildings and parking areas have not been proposed as of yet. This corner was thought of as being, potentially some green space and maybe a future potential connection to a parking area, should the Taft Corner Shopping Center adjacent to the site get reworked and a connection be desired. So putting a pond here means you probably won't be able to drive between the parking lot at Finney and the parking lot at Taft Corner Shopping Center in this location anymore. Pedestrian connectivity is retained with a multi-use path along US 2 in this location. So that's the change. And it's big enough, it's more than 1,000 square feet of site work, which means it does require discretionary permit review by this board. So staff has prepared findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommended conditions of approval for this project. The conditions of approval in this case are all our standard conditions. They are very similar to standard conditions that have been applied to Finney Crossing in the past, and it's always understood that wherever there are conflicting conditions on a project like this, the most stringent of them are the ones that are operative. So we're reciting them because we recite them for every approval, but there's really no special conditions that the staff has prepared related to this pond. I'll stop there.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Do you have reason to believe that this proposed new stormwater pond is going to satisfy the abutters' concerns?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And so you have reason to believe that the appeal in the Act 250 based on the case made for the runoff is going to be dropped?
That's correct. We have a legal agreement in place.
Right. I just didn't want you to go through all these steps. I didn't think you would, but I just wanted to ask the question. Okay. Andy or Chris, is there anything that you would like to add to Matt's description of the proposed project?
No.
Not unless the board has additional questions, no.
Okay.
nothing to add.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
You want koi in this pond?
No.
No.
There's probably not gonna be enough water in there.
How does this work in conjunction with Stormwater Basin 1 adjacent?
Okay, so Stormwater Basin 1, which is up here, located to the west of the parking lot for the hotel, which is here, is designed to serve the commercial portion of Finney Crossing. This Stormwater Basin 6 is designed to be detention facility for the stormwater runoff that originates over here at the intersection of Zephyr Road, Maple Tree Place, and Route 2. It does not include any of the runoff from Zephyr Road. That's all collected and conveyed down to Basin 3, which is a little bit further to the north here. It's really picking up runoff that's coming down Route 2 from Telcott Road being the high point, a little bit of runoff from Maple Tree Place, from the wetland area here. There's a little bit of runoff. It's not picking up runoff from the Shaw's parking lot, but there's a little bit of green space through here. And then primarily Williston Road itself. And right now, that runoff, all sheet flows onto Finney, gets picked up in the old barnyard ditch, which comes across the Finney Crossing property to the west, is entering into a closed system on the abutters property, flows over and around, and then ends up behind Lenny's Shoe, where all of the stormwater in this area comes together, at least from the Finney Crossing commercial, the hamlet, the Taft's Corner Shopping Center, and then continues westerly to across Williston Road, takes a very roundabout way to get to Muddy Brook. But this pond that's being proposed here is strictly for that off-site runoff, doesn't pick up any runoff from the Finney Crossing development area, is really just to reduce the peak flow from that off-site area to the wetland and ultimately to the receiving water, Muddy Brook.
There must be some advantage to doing it as two separate ponds.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I can only imagine. I don't want to know, but I can only imagine.
Right?
It's regulatory.
Regulatory and the rationale of commingling of stormwater pieces.
Are we gonna see additional structures though then because of that?
There is.
No, you'll see
s-
I mean, there will be a
input.
little bit of standing water here, not a whole lot. There'll be some landscaping along the westerly side.
There's none of those concrete structures that stick up out of the water.
There is
Submerged or-
one over in the bank here, but it's actually got a large reverse slope pipe coming into it. So you will see the top, but it's not, won't be as apparent as some of them are.
You know, the ones that look like the submarines coming in.
Mhm.
This gonna have required fencing like the one across the street from you guys? The one that,
No, the one at Maple Tree Place with the gabions has a more abrupt drop off from the edge of the pond into the standing water. These all have 4-on-1 slopes. There is a retaining wall down here, and there'll be a retaining wall separating the two, and there'll be a fence there. But otherwise, the slopes are relatively flat in order to avoid the need for a fence and to just make it a little more natural in terms of the side slopes and the appearance.
What about the maintenance around it? Will it be mowed area or not like the one by Lenny's where the cattails are 20 feet high?
That's correct. It'll be
Yeah.
a maintained area. Yes.
How much excess capacity is there here? I mean, I do think, I think the loss of that connector drive, even though I guess the neighbor isn't necessarily amenable to that, having that provision there, I feel like allows for a lot of connectivity without having to get on Wilson Road or 2A. And so I guess, is there a way to have both? Is there a way to maybe shift that sewer, if that sewer is not already there, to shift that, tie into another manhole, so that you can shift all the basin, storm basin south, I guess, so that you can fit in a small driveway easement? It would be a shame to lose that. I feel like having that interconnection here just saves a lot of people having to go out and around.
There are some utilities in here now. There's a utility pole and a electric vault.
So those are already underground there?
Yes.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Is there any excess capacity, or have you basically committed to this amount of storage, or
We have committed to this amount of storage.
this volume or whatever? Okay.
John?
I'm fine.
David?
Good.
Paul? Anything else to add? Any public comments from the audience?
There's no evidence.
Okay. We are going to close DP 09-01.5 at 8:10. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. We'll see you soon.
When is the bank breaking ground?
October 15th.
Soon.
Soon. And we're working on the hotel in the next week to 2 weeks.
Is the bank gonna give away samples if they're groundbreaking?
I don't know.
I'll go if they are.
Chick-fil-A is over in Plattsburgh.
Free candy.
Chick-fil-A.
It's coming in October.
Here?
In Plattsburgh.
Blacksburg, yes, that's in Virginia.
Thanks, guys. Welcome back to the Town of Williston's Development Review Board for Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. It is 8:30, and the DRB is out of deliberation. Do I have a motion to approve DP 16-41.1 REM Development LLC?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, David Turner, moved the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at public hearing of September 25th, 2018, and the findings of fact and conclusions of law proposed by staff for the review of DP 1641, Amendment Number 1, and approve this discretionary permit subject to conditions above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which the approval is based. We're gonna do a change to the finding and fact of number 2 and change the size of the structure from 40 by 35 to 40 by 40.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
Paul seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. DP 13-19.4 GIT Realty LLC has been continued to October 23rd. Mr. Kelly?
DP, do I have a motion for DP 09-01.15, Snyder FC Commercial Properties LLC and Riley Properties LLC?
Yes.
As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, John Hemmelgarn, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of September 25th, 2018, and the findings of fact and conclusions of law proposed by staff for the review of DP 09-01, AMD number 15, and approved this discretionary permit subject to conditions above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
David Turner seconds it. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
1.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, great. Any comments, any information staff wants to share with the board, anything?
Just, I know I wasn't here right at the first second of the meeting, but we are welcoming Brad Falco to the staff
Welcome, Brad.
team.
Welcome, Brad.
Hello, Brad.
Brad's our new planning technician, so we're back up to full strength in the office. If you come in at the front desk, you might see him. You'll certainly see him here at the board. So that's number one. And number two, we have set aside the meeting in 2 weeks for a board training, so there's no applications. We're going to take some time to go through board procedures, what state law says about what we're here to do and how we're supposed to do it. Leave some time for any questions folks have, and it's one of our goals as a staff to kind of conduct those sessions with various of our committees and check in from time to time.
I think that's great.
We do also want to start making more opportunities available to folks who are volunteers on our boards. Things like the Vermont Planners Association Fall Zoning Forum, which is just like the wildest party you've ever been to. Zoning administrators in it. Emily and Brad will be attending that next week.
October.
Or, sorry, in October, next month.
Hope
And,
it's not next week
not
already.
next week.
Next week is October, though.
However, next week
End
is
of
October.
October, yeah.
So, we do have some opportunities we're sometimes aware of. The zoning forums are great because sometimes you'll get a panel of environmental court judges who will tell you all about the cases that get appealed to them and what makes a good case on behalf of the town and what makes a bad one. And we've found that useful in the past. So you may also, after we have our training conversation, see some emails from us that don't look like just sending you the agenda, but say, hey, there's an opportunity coming up if anybody wants to go to this. We have it in the budget. Some of these things are relatively economical for us to send a few people to, and sometimes there's even carpool opportunities with one of us where you can bend one of our ears all the way to Lake Maury and back, which is where they seem to happen. So just keep an eye out for that. But if you see something like that that you want to share with us or with the group, we're all ears for that as well.
Great. Anything else?
Minutes, right?
Yep, minutes. Yep. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of August 28th, 2018?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 28th, 2018 as written.
Paul seconds it. Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 6 ayes,
I abstain.
5 ayes, 1 abstention, minutes are approved. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:36?
So moved.
No, I want to stay.